Otis Sanford, political analyst here for ABC 24, joining us now. Otis, I just want your initial thoughts and just reactions from today's outcome.
Well, I have two sort of extreme reactions. One is I'm not surprised that the worst charges, the murder charges, they were found not guilty. I'm not surprised by that. It seems to me that the ones who did the most in terms of causing Tyre Nichols' death are the ones who pled guilty to the charge. So I'm not surprised by that. I am surprised that none of the lesser charges, oppression and failing to follow procedure and things like that, I am surprised that there were no guilty verdicts on any of those, and it doesn't seem like the jury even considered that. That's my initial reaction. But you know, I think I said before that I'm just not convinced that the prosecution put on enough proof. They had 5 witnesses. They didn't have anybody from the police department that I heard that talked about policies and procedures, which was part of the defense. And so I'm just surprised I was surprised by the lack of a robust prosecution here when the defense brought in at least 17 witnesses. And of course you have what appears to be a police-friendly jury here. Those are my initial reactions.
Yeah, you're echoing a lot of the same notes that Pastor Fisher had here.
I stole his notes.
And I didn't.
I stole his notes and I beat him here. So.
Right. And I was driving, didn't even hear it, so I didn't steal his.
No, for sure. One of the things that District Attorney Mulroy said was the fact that they felt like they did everything they could have. He couldn't really think back, and he wasn't going to take it there. Essentially, just what they should or shouldn't have done. What do you think about his reaction coming out of the courtroom? And he is, proud of his team. They've worked hard, clearly.
Well, yeah, I mean, I heard some of that when I was preparing to come down. That's what you expect. I mean, he's not going to get out there and trash his team. These are experienced prosecutors. Mr. Hagerman is very experienced, so he's not going to do that. But I just say again that the stakes were really high here. And I think you put on more proof than you need and overwhelm the jury as much as you can. Yes, there was video, and it was very compelling video. But the video alone, because of the nighttime and you really can't see who did what to whom in some respects, you needed more than just the video to prove the top level cases. And when we talk about the lesser charges, you needed someone to clearly explain, someone from the police department, to clearly explain, no, this was not procedure. No, you are not supposed to treat people this way and hold them this way and then misstate what you did. Those are violations, and those were part of the lesser charges. So while I expect that D.A. Mulroy, I expected him to say what he said, I'm just not sure that the public is going to buy all of it, honestly.
Yeah, Pepper, to Otis's point, I studied, my PhD is in rhetoric and communication from the University of Memphis. I'm sure Otis appreciates
Good old U of it.
Right, and one of the things we learn about is what's called epidictic or ceremonial rhetoric. So what do we expect Mulroy to say?
Exactly.
He's not going to get up there and say that his team put on a mediocre defense or lacked zeal or was not thorough. Who knows what he might say behind closed doors? Who knows how much influence he had on whatever kind of defense was put together? Same is true, or the point that I'm trying to make regarding C.J. Davis. Was it simply ceremonial rhetoric when she stood in front of hundreds of millions of people on national news outlets and said they violated policy, they did not follow their training? There is a gap between what came out in this trial and what came out of Chief Davis's mouth, which says someone must be lying. And we, the general public, would hope that that truth would come out during the trial. It didn't come out during the trial. We're left with just as many questions as we had before insofar as what the fundamental truth is. And so what do people expect the general public to feel except for a level of skepticism, because we know if I or Otis were on trial, chances are that prosecution would have been a lot more thorough, comprehensive, and aggressive. They say it's better to have something and not need it than to need it and not have it. They clearly needed much more evidence and did not have it.
And go ahead.
Oh, I agree with that 100%. And to the point with Chief C.J. Davis, and I don't understand why she wasn't called as a witness.
And that was one topic we discussed as well.
Yeah, I don't understand that. Because the prosecution, their job is to prosecute. And they can't worry about anything else. And if there was a fear that, or there was some concern that, well, she really can't testify because the civil case is hanging over their head, that's not the prosecution's problem. The prosecution is there to prosecute the charges that they filed.
Right.
When you file those charges, you were telling the public, I have the evidence to sustain those charges. And now we see that if they had it, they didn't present it. And I just think, again, that either C.J. Davis or one of her chief top people should have been on that witness stand talking about policies and procedures and violation of procedures, because that went to the heart of the defense.
So do you have any insight as to why that didn't happen, why she wasn't called to that?
I have none. I mean, my sources are from many years ago in the police department, so I don't have them. I can only surmise that maybe she was hesitant to testify, or somebody higher up in the police department was hesitant to testify because of the civil case, and they don't want to admit some liability that then they would have to show in the civil case. But again,
Brother Otis,
that doesn't have anything to do with this case.
And Brother Otis, a Google search will show you what she said.
Absolutely.
So it's not like they
Absolutely.
are asking her to present testimony that is not already in the public record.
I agree with you.
So here's what, since we can speculate just a little bit, and so I'm conceding that I'm speculating this, but I think there is enough precedent historically to validate what I'm trying to say, that there is a collusion, and I don't mean that in the worst sense, but a collusion between these different factions of law enforcement. So you had the DA's office, you had the Memphis Police Department, you have other law enforcement agencies and entities, and they know they must work together. And so if you put on as robust and comprehensive and thorough as a defense as you need to, all of a sudden you have hung the culture of policing out to dry. You've laid it bare, which is something an advocate like me is praying for and begging for and pushing for. Whatever it is, as ugly and as heinous as it is, let's deal with it. We had an opportunity to deal with it. They chose not to. This is my argument. They would have to prove me wrong. They chose not to. And in doing so, you now placed an unrealistic burden on a jury that is not from the area, doesn't understand the culture. Most of them have probably never experienced what people like Tyre Nichols or black folks in Memphis and Shelby County experience from police. And now they don't have the consciousness to sift through what they seen and what they heard, coupled with the instructions that are given from, because most of us don't speak legalese. Most of us don't know some of the ins and outs of law and what you can and cannot do. Most of them, I don't even know, and I bet you in weeks or years, when they start interviewing, they say juror B or something like that, juror B is going to say, I didn't know I could have A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And so now we have to wait on that. So again, I disagree with Otis 1,000% here. It's a missed opportunity because there was not enough righteous, robust, relevant evidence that was presented that would have made this as much of a no-brainer as some of us who feel like we know a little bit more just clearly see this as.
So
Well, I'm not going to, very briefly.
Go ahead.
I wouldn't use, and I understand how you've phrased that. I'm not going to use the word collusion.
Yeah, you can give me a better
Because that's Earle's word, not mine.
Yeah.
But I do get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Because the factions here do have to work together on other cases and down the road. And you are absolutely right about the makeup of the jury and their lived experiences. I mean, when you pick a jury, you are expecting that jury to bring their lived experiences to the case. It happens all the time. I covered hundreds of trials back in the 70s and 80s as a reporter. And you can't dismiss your lived experiences. And so that's part of this case as well. That, to Earl's point, it is incumbent then upon the prosecution to cut through and get to your lived experiences and help them understand what happened here and why it was a crime and why they should be convicted. And I think that's where they fell short.
So with that said, where does this put the public's trust in not only MPD, but then all of the local agencies that are then working with MPD?
I think this echoes the skepticism and the sentiment that people have been expressing. Read the DOJ report, and you will see how much distrust, and I say warranted distrust, exists amongst the citizens in the community. And again, this is why certain people don't come forward. There are several people who have said that they have experienced similar things from the Scorpion unit or the Memphis Gang unit and other units, but they don't feel like they should come forward because they don't believe that they would get justice. And I think here we are again with more truth to that fact.
Yeah, I think it is a huge setback for all the entities here involved. Yes, we have that DOJ report that was prepared during a previous administration, I might add. And now we have a new administration that really, as far as they're concerned, put it on the shelf somewhere, never to be seen again. And then you have a city administration that, for whatever reason, righteous or otherwise, they said, we are not going to go into any kind of consent decree. It's too costly, to this, to that. But we are going to put together this committee, this group, the fact-finding group, and they are fine people, all of them. But again, you ask about the public here. And I think this really does damage to the public perception that fairness is involved, not just in the police department, but in the police department working with all of these other entities, to the point that you brought up, that says, we can't get a fair shake in this community. And my trust in the entities, the institutions that are designed to protect and serve, they're not doing that way.
Or maybe protection and service is just a political facade. It's something that you put forth. What you really mean is punishment and surveillance, which is what we experienced here. And so again, I don't see how we can reasonably expect anything less than skepticism, because the system and the structure keeps proving itself insofar as its inability to give the average black man or woman a fair trial in the system. One thing we didn't discuss last week, I'd be curious to hear your perspective on this, Otis. I know we talked about it a little bit. The first thing I thought when I heard about the makeup of the jury is, how did this happen? No African Americans, not an African American man, not an African American woman. I sat in that courtroom. I looked. Now, I know some of this is going to be biased based upon my perception, right? But ethnically, I saw a bunch of conventional white men and women. I saw one brother who probably is Latino, but could pass for white. I saw one sister who may have been Asian or Filipino or Latina. Other than that, it looked like what you think when you close your eyes and say Chattanooga.
What was the jury pool? I mean, the broader makeup.
Great question, I don't know.
Yeah.
Our Lauren Turman does have that information, but I do want to cut it off here for now. Thank you so much, Pastor Fisher, for being
Thank
here. I
y'all
know
for
you have
having
to
me.
leave.
Yep.
We will continue our conversation with Otis Sanford